New policy SP 6.305, student suicide prevention.
This is one of those requirements, that we get from the Tennessee School Board. It comes periodically, and it's a required policy that we need to add. It's nothing different as far as operating procedure for the district. We've always been required to do professional development on suicide training at the beginning of the school year. So Ms. Fontenot, our social worker, has a good plan in place for this. The only change is that it's an expansion of who is trained through the suicide training. It is going to be all of the Germantown Municipal School District staff who come in contact with children. The exceptions are going to be, we are not required to train those people that are outsourced for us. So, for example, ABM, our custodial services, our bus drivers, we can't require them to do this because Aramark, because they're not our employees. So we can only do it. So all of our employees who are on our payroll will go through this training.
And how? Really, I mean, we've offered this training all along.
Yeah,
so how's it going to differ? We've
just expanded it to all staff will be included through this policy.
And that's in response to the statute.
And that's yes. So the statute changed it and expanded it. So.
Is there a certain amount of hours required?
It lists. It's at the beginning of the school year. It does list the number of hours.
I was just curious. I can remember if we had.
But you. I'd have to look at. I don't think it has to be in the policy.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Exact hours.
And typically we did it through the Jason Foundation. There was online video training that we would do during the in-service.
Okay. Any other discussion, questions about this policy? Next on the work session agenda is revision of policy IP 4.600 grading.
This is a two-part change to our existing policy. The first part that you see was a recommendation from our teachers. We had several groups of teachers at the high school, middle school, elementary school level that really wanted us to remove the maximum number of grades that we had for our different grades. So you can see at number 4, it takes out the wording and maximum of 20. And then at number 2, it says a maximum of 20. Some teachers, and specifically in the foreign languages, they like to give smaller quizzes to students, and so this became a challenge. So all they were really doing was going around the policy. They were chunking all the vocabulary quiz grades into one grade, so it was really defeating the purpose. So the first change is in response to our teachers saying they would like that removed from the policy. The second part is a requirement from the Tennessee School Board and from the State Department of Education. This does not apply to any of our classes right now, but it's for dual credit classes. And there are classes that you get college credit for that the state offers. I think there are 3 different courses that they offer that you can do this for. We offer dual enrollment courses, but we have to add this dual credit classes to our policy. And it is a staggered scale in between what we are currently doing for our AP dual enrollment courses and for our honors courses. So you can see an A in that class equates to a 4.75 scale, a B 3.75, C 2.75, D 1.75. So the DC part is required. Are there questions on?
Any other questions? Next on the agenda is miscellaneous budget amendments. The first budget amendment, I don't know, is Mr. Jones, does he want to come up?
He is not. He was
okay.
ill today, so I'm going to be taking over
okay.
Mr. Jones's responsibilities. The first is a very good budget amendment. We received an extra appropriation from the County Commission. This is for the last fiscal year, so it is 1.3 million, or 1.3 was the original budget, and you can see we're increasing it to 1.970, I think, 1.967. We are not allocating this for a project. We are just putting it into our capital improvements account. I think Mr. Cathy will tell you that he has plenty on his plate this summer that he is trying to accomplish, whether it's the roof and AC at Dogwood or it's the building project at Riverdale. We cannot take on any projects. The bidding process alone would get us, school would be started by the time we did this. So,
do you want to just give us a quick update on Dogwood.
Sure, Mr. Kathy, you want to come up and give us an update?
Be happy to.
Hello, Mr. Cathy.
Hello. At Dogwood, the rooftop units and the energy management system, for the most part, they've completed the lion's share of the work. Every one of them has punch list items to go through, and we're still doing some troubleshooting and tweaking. But for the most part, the substantial part of the work is complete on all three of those things. So that's the best update I know to give. It's going to be a great improvement on what's there. It's a TPO roof, white. It's really a spectacular product. So I'm very excited about having it in place for Dogwood when they come back to school.
Do you want updates on others?
Yes, I was going to say, why don't you update us on Riverdale?
Sure, I'll go through school.
I can do the Riverdale too.
Okay.
So I was because Mr. Cathy was out of town last week. I was out there this past week. You know, I enjoy going out there every morning on my way to work to see the progress that they're making. And of course, everyone can watch it online because we've got that camera live footage. But they have now laid the footings for the first wing, which is the science wing. So if you actually want to go out there, and I recommend that the board that we take a trip out there to see the progress that they've made. You can actually see the outline of that building. It's exciting work. I know that they were expanding the footings, so because we didn't get the rain that was projected, or as much rain, I believe they've continued the work on the second classroom wing of the school, moving on to the gym. So it's moving quickly. You want to tell them about the parking lot, or?
The parking lot, they're doing the dirt work and the grubbing this week, and they started last week, so they're doing all of the site prep, and then soil, cement, and paving is scheduled to begin on July 18th in order to get the front and the back ready for car line and parking for next year. We had some logistics to work out as well on where the main entrance of the building was going to be, because the current main entrance is ripped apart and it's not going to be usable. So we've got, I think, a plan that'll work where the entrance will be by the kindergarten building, but we've had to make some adjustments and logistics things. We got with Mr. Bond, and we think we've got a plan that'll certainly suffice for next year.
For the whole school year?
For the whole school year, it'll be on the kindergarten, because the front part is going to eventually connect to the new building, and right now it's literally been torn off.
Yeah, I noticed
So
that.
the car line will be the drive that they were coming in, but they'll go to that back where the bus loop was at Riverdale, and that's where parents will drop going into the kindergarten wing. The buses will drop in the front of the school in the new lot that they have built. So those bus riders will then be escorted on the sidewalks up to the main building. So they think they have a plan that's going to
So rain days will be bad for bus drivers this school year,
yes.
while the work in between is going on. Okay. Got to break some eggs, right? Do you have the contractors at Dogwood giving you an expectation for when they're going to be off-site? They're going to be done, wrapped up and gone?
They start getting liquidated damages after July 25th, so that's their drop dead date to be
Do
completed.
you think they're going to be a little bit ahead of that?
I think they're going to be a little bit ahead of that. We've already started. We had to at least start to get them moving inside so that we could get ABM in to start stripping and waxing floors. So we had to wait at least a month because it was just too chaotic to even try. But they just finished the first wing up front today, and so now they're starting to move along the wings. There's only 4, and we're almost finished at 3 of our other schools, so we'll start sending more manpower and have it knocked out pretty quickly.
Super.
Waxing is pretty much done at Farmington and at Houston High School and Houston Middle School, so the floors are looking good. They're going to have to do a mass project at Riverdale and at Dogwood once they're done with those projects, where they're bringing all the crews over from those schools to help finish the waxing project for those schools. Portables at Dogwood are on site and almost hooked up, and they are very, very nice. That's another one that I want you to take your students in, or bring the school board in, excuse me. I think that once we have students in those, parents are going to be very pleased. It was so nice that when we went there, I'm not suggesting we keep these portables, but I would have loved to have taught in these. The bathrooms are nicer than the brick and mortar bathrooms. They have a teacher restroom inside of this. They don't have to leave to use the restroom. It's a very nice facility, so I think parents are going to be pleased once they see these.
What about the paving at Houston?
The paving at Houston, our side of it is done. The only thing that remains is a little bit of fencing work over by the football field. But the part the city is doing that they agreed to do as part of the Lateral G project, they just really started on last week. They've milled it, and now they're going about repaving. So we should have it all ready to go well before August 1st. But yeah, our part's done. The city has begun their part on the paving. And we're working on, we've been working on a communication and a traffic plan now that we've got pavement on the high school campus and we're moving start times back. We've been working on a traffic plan with Mr. Cherry and getting input from a lot of different sources on a way to improve traffic on Wolf River Boulevard and get more traffic onto the campus. And we think we've come up with a plan that's going to be a lot more beneficial and a lot more efficient than what we've had in the past. So we've been working real close with the city. We've asked them to leave that median out between the east and west entrances and turn
Yeah,
into
I
a turn
wondered it was
lane.
gone. I didn't know if that was something that we had asked for.
Yes.
We asked for
So
it.
it'll allow cars to queue in that lane instead of backing it all the way up
Oh,
to
okay.
Houston Levy like it's been doing. So Mr. Cathy did a good job of realizing once the city was repaving to ask for something, and we got it accomplished.
Any other updates?
I don't think we hit them all.
Thank you.
So that was the first budget amendment. But really, because of all those projects, it's not realistic that we could do a bidding process for this. And I do think it's worthwhile for the board to revisit our 5-year capital improvement plan. So that once we get past the summer, once we really hit August, go back and look at that list and see if we want to continue with that same plan as it's listed. I mentioned before that one of the things, for example, that we had thought was important, the boiler at Riverdale, because of its age, and speaking to our foreman, he does not think that's an issue. He thinks that's something that we can continue to have in our 5-year plan in case it breaks, but he's seen 100-year boilers that are working just fine. So it's something that we need to revisit probably in August.
I'm pretty sure the school building principals had input into that plan when we originally developed it, but would it make sense to ask them for the
Yes.
update on, if you had somewhere between $200,000 and $1,200,000 to spend in your building, how would you spend it?
Yes.
Because we'll see when we get to August what we get.
Next budget amendment?
The next one, budget amendment number 2, is a requirement from the comptroller's office. This is one that we just have to do. It's not a change in what we're actually budgeted. It's just reclassifying. So if you can see, the OT, PT therapist salaries were listed in the SPED classroom line item. Those are being moved to a different category, which is SPED support. So it's the same amount of money, same funding, just where we're allocating this money has to change according to the state. And that's just a change in their policy.
Any questions? Budget amendment number 3?
That's the exact same thing for number 3. Same amount of money that we had budgeted before. It's just a reclassification of how we budget the money. So those technology costs were budgeted in internet connectivity, and I forgot which account. It's being moved to a new account. I think it's admin equipment is the one that it's getting moved to. So another requirement from the state.
Any questions on budget amendment number 3? Okay. Budget amendment number 4?
Okay, budget amendment number 4 is one that we are bringing in response to changes that have happened in district office staff, and then also catching something that I think was underlooked as far as somebody who is working for the district. The first is because of Ms. Price's selection as the principal of Dogwood Elementary School. And this was a hard decision for me personally, because I had to take, I guess, our needs as the central office out of the picture. We had to say who was the best principal for Dogwood Elementary School, and it was Ms. Price. And I think the parents are going to really enjoy her and the expertise that she brings to that school and the excitement that she's going to bring. But in doing, we had seen challenges with what Ms. Price was doing. It was her position is not typical in school systems, And when we did the feasibility study to begin with, you look, most districts have a special education director, and they have a director of instructional curriculum or academic advancement. And because of her expertise of doing both special ed and instruction, she was serving both roles. And she was spread thin. So because of that, we want to reclassify or repurpose one of the positions that was vacated. Ms. DeLoso, another exceptional, one of our members, took a promotion, and she is working for Lakeland now. She is going to be essentially the equivalent of Ms. Price, what Ms. Price's role was in Lakeland. So what we want to do is repurpose her position. It was listed as a coordinator position, and we only had 2 applicants for that special education position, and we had it posted for an extended period of time. So with Ms. Price's leaving, what we want to do is repurpose that to a director position, which I think adds about $20,000 budget-wise to that position, so that we can have a special education director, not hire another coordinator. So we had 3 people working for special ed, now have a director and a coordinator, and that's what they're focusing on. So that's the first change that I'm recommending out of the increased funds from the county commission. That's the general operating funds that they've allocated. The second amount of funding increase that I'm requesting is for Mr. Fisher. What we've realized is he has the title of coordinator. We have several coordinators, but wasn't getting paid what the other coordinators in the district were being paid. And it was just an oversight on our part, because he was being paid out of a grant for the coordinated school health. If that was all he was doing, that would make sense, that he would get paid what the grant was paying. But he has taken on such a big role in the district, and we can't thank Mr. Fisher enough, because he has brought the city and the district state recognition for what he's doing with the Go Noodle programs. He helped with the 5K Stampede. What we have really added, or Mr. Fisher has taken on responsibility-wise, let me pull it out here, if I can get his list. Not only is he doing the coordinated school health responsibilities, but he's also taken on instructional coordinator responsibilities. So he deals with all of our nurses district-wide. He deals with the student accident insurance claims for the district. He's also our physical education coordinator and works with all the wellness teachers, whether it's the portfolios that we need to do for their evaluations, or whether he's working about bringing in new devices. So he brought in the heart rate monitors, or the polar flow systems in our classes. They could actually track how students' heart rates were performing during a lesson. CPR certification. So we received recognition because Mr. Fisher, who was it, all of our sophomores that were freshmen?
All our freshmen and juniors received along with several staff.
And so that's something that he's added to his role as the coordinated school health director to really bring instruction to students, whether he's working with the concussion protocols with the district, or like I already mentioned, the Stampede, or working with the Healthy Germantown Commission. He meets with them regularly. So what we're asking is to bring his salary up to the other coordinators in the district, because he does have that title, and he is taking on other responsibilities with that extra funding. And so that is budget amendment number 4.
Will he also be doing, since the requirements for physical education?
Yes.
Will that fall under him, keeping track of the hours and the reporting of that?
Yes, so he is very involved with that. So because of those increases in those numbers, he is really helping us, our principals, look at how they're developing their schedules and making sure that we have the new requirements for physical education during the school day, non-structured. Other questions on?
How much increase is it?
I think it's
kind of rolled together.
It's about $20,000 too when you look at benefits also.
So is that director supervisor salaries?
Yes, so it's the 2 components. That's your increase. So it's about $20,000 for the moving the coordinator up to a director, and about $20,000 for making him level with the other coordinator pay.
And so now Teresa's job, what it was before, she won't be handling any of the sped.
Or yes, that new individual.
Is there anything else, federal funding? Is that gonna,
so yes, so we will
she's still
probably
gonna handle that,
for this
or?
position. It hasn't been posted yet because I was waiting on the board's input for this position. We would probably make them a joint special education director and also federal programs. A lot of her time was spent working with E-Plan and making sure that our programs, and we have to have equal amounts of funding budgeted to receive the state and federal funding. She spends a lot of time doing that financial side of it too. So like I said, it's taking one coordinator position, and it was a department of 3 people, making it 2 people, with one of them being a director, one being a coordinator, instead of 2 coordinators and a director.
Any questions? Comments? Next on the agenda is the OPEB update.
This does not require any action. I just wanted to give the board information about where we were in this process. Mr. Deli has been on this committee, so he can actually tell us about the process that we've gone through to really get to this point. But I think what we have landed on are 3 different plans that our committee will be making a decision on, and then they will make a recommendation to the board. Mr. Deli, I don't know if you want to fill in any.
Yeah, I mean, we've met, the committee consists of both current and retired teachers, members of the community, myself, and it's a pretty good cross-section, I think, of different stakeholders. We've met on several occasions. We looked at several different changes to the OPEB. With an idea that in doing this, we want to make sure we respect those who have been in the system a long time, and that you don't have drastic changes for those folks that are going to be impacted, that we make sure we're fiscally sound, that anything we do we're going to pay for, because the worst thing you can do is promise benefits that in the end don't get paid for, and that we just treat people with respect. So we had, I think the last we left, we kind of got down to 3 different alternatives, but we haven't actually seen those alternatives.
Yes.
Which is, I think, where you're saying that the group's going to meet again, but we haven't.
We're seeing the price attached
Right,
to the
we
alternatives.
hadn't
Yes.
seen, we kind of got down to this is what we think we want, different things to consider, but I think where we last left it was we're going to have another meeting to look at what the prices are and where we stand, so that's kind of.
And what we received?
So that is
That has prices on here, is that?
That has the price,
okay.
so the actuary has actually looked at our teacher population and put a price tag with each of those. So you're getting the early look before
Yeah, the
committee does.
group, I mean, the group has not
Yeah.
met and discussed those. When I say we haven't seen them, it's the group has not gotten together and looked at.
Well, that's why I want to make sure, because there were prices attached. And then when it says some of the different lifetime maxes, were those determined by our actuary, or
No,
how did we come to those?
It was really for us coming up with what is a threshold. The objective here is to not create an unfunded liability. And so if you have an open-ended lifetime, bonus, whether you're talking about healthcare, that's grows exponentially when you start looking at your arc that you have to fund.
So this is really determined by the committee?
Yeah, it's really, yes.
Okay.
The committee saying. And we asked, I think we started out with 9 different options or plans that we were, a lot of scenarios that we kept sending to the actuary, and they would crunch the numbers for us over a couple months, get it back to us. We would look at them again, we'd ask for a change, they'd crunch the numbers again for us to really see what we can afford. We knew that these were going to be in this ballpark as far as cost when we were talking about funding our OPEB requirement, our ARC. So we feel very confident that the board could choose any of these plans.
The little write-up we got didn't talk about life insurance, so there's no change?
No, I think that's one of those exceptional decisions that we made. We're one of the districts that has not had an increase in their health insurance cost since their creation, and that's not the case in the other districts. Every year they've had an increase in healthcare costs, and that's not typical across the professional world either. So we are doing well with our health insurance program and built a healthy reserve because we are self-insured.
So like Plan E and Plan G talk about stipends for a certain, like Tier 3 and so forth. Retirees also get a life insurance benefit, don't they?
Yes, currently. Historically in Shelby County that did not. It's one of those things that we provided. That's one of the things that the committee was looking at is
think
some.
the reason why you don't have that listed is because I think the committee had felt that most of the retirees didn't even see that as, didn't even know they got that benefit. And so the committee felt like it was better to use that money to put it into other retirement vehicles. And so there's been no final decisions made, but I think the committee was all kind of united in leaning toward that life insurance isn't really providing value for the retirees, and so we'd rather use those funds and put it into other buckets.
We still have the fully insured life insurance plans that any retiree could take advantage of.
Right.
So we can offer that to them, that if they want that life insurance,
They could, that was, yeah. so that
they could purchase that too.
It would still be available, it just would not be district provided.
And so the committee is going to basically look at whatever it is, E and G or G and F?
Yes.
E and G? So somebody got dropped, F got dropped.
Yes.
And make a recommendation to the board, and then you can bring E and G to the board with the recommendation?
Yes.
Or- okay. That sounds very good. The other thing I wanted to say, I said this to you on the phone Friday, I realize we don't have like a firm stop, hard deadline for adopting these modifications.
Yes.
But because we are changing the promise to some junior employees, I have a desire to let them know what those changes are
Right.
sooner rather than later. So I'm glad we're going to be getting to this next month.
Yeah, hopefully August.
Okay. Any other questions on OPEB? Okay. We'll go back to...
Wait.
Oh,
Does the committee want a recommendation from the board? Or no?
No, I think they're just going to explain why they would choose this plan, and then really it's for the board to decide.
Okay. Okay.
Y'all will be the final decision-making body in this case.
Okay.
Let's go back to, we skipped over the renewal of superintendent's contract. Let's go back to that.
Sure. Well, I think we talked about, when I was evaluated last, that it is typical to renew a superintendent's contract during the summertime, so that you're not having a change of who's leading your district during a school year. And it's also typical that you talk about this after you have evaluated the superintendent. The other superintendents of the municipal districts, with the exclusion of Mr. Atkin, already did this after their first year. But I think we waited to see how good our district was performing before we did this. So I'd just like to highlight some of the things we've done, and going back looking at what the district has done and how successful we have been, I think is important. I've told you before, I think I was really appreciated the fact that I got to start a district from the ground up. Most superintendents walk into an established human resource department. They have their health insurance plans. They've got a transportation plan. We didn't have those things. We had to make them all from scratch. So that's been a special learning curve for me, and I think other superintendents too, because they don't get to experience something like this. But what have we done since I've been superintendent? I won't read them all because there's so many. But we've added strings programs to Riverdale, Farmington, and Dogwood. We added STEM programs to Riverdale Houston High School. We moved to an online registration for all of our schools. We've increased the special education assistant staffing at all of our schools. We added a nurse to each of our schools. We increased the clerical staffing at Houston High School. We added interventionists at all of our schools starting next year. That's the RTI. We've increased our technology support in our school districts from a ratio of 10-to-1 to 2-to-1, and it's going to be a 1-to-1 once we start this next school year in the 1-to-1 implementation. Academically, and this was in my letter to all the parents, and I won't read all these either, we have a record-setting $32.4 million in scholarships for the high school. We had 6 National Merit semifinalists. We had a record 199 members of the 30-plus ACT club. We had 6 perfect scores on the ACT this past year, but I think even more important than that, we had 13 students that had a 35 in that group, and we had 27 with a 34. We're doing good things, and I think next year it's going to be even a larger or higher ACT average. We were number 4 in the Washington Post Most Challenging High Schools, number 11 in Newsweek's Best High Schools, Mr. Becker, I'm going to mess this one up. We set a record with Best of the Preps. How many years consecutively?
I completely trust your memory on all of it.
What is it? How many have we set in a row?
18.
18 Best of the Preps. But before that, we had Best of the Preps 2. They just weren't consecutive. So athletically, we're setting the bar. I'm not listing all the state championships that we had, girls soccer, girls golf. Last year we had state champions in boys soccer too. Our cheer and pom teams both won national championships. But I think this is more important. One of the things that I've tried to do as a superintendent is really involve the stakeholders, like we didn't see in Shelby County schools. And so right from the bat, when we were looking at zoning, when we, I don't know if y'all remember the wedge conversation about the neighborhood that was in the wedge, we brought in representatives from each of the schools, parents from each of the schools, and these just weren't our schools. These were the Germantown elementary, middle, and high school parents. We had 8 different stakeholder groups that helped design our zoning. I think that's special. You didn't see that with Shelby County schools. We did the same thing when we decided, what do we need to do with our buildings? Do we need to add on a wing? Or do we need to add on extra space at the school? Or do we need to build an addition onto Riverdale? Do we need to have a new elementary school? We had 3 facility planning sessions that were out in our communities to really engage our stakeholders. We've had 3 strategic vision meetings. We had numerous Riverdale design meetings. And I said this at the groundbreaking. We didn't design that school. The people using that school got to design their school. Talk about what type of office space they needed, what type of classroom space that they need. The original design that we had didn't include all of those things, but because we engaged them and they were the ones involved in that committee work, that was important. And those are things that I think I've done a good job of bringing to the district. We've had 2 calendar meetings. We had the Germantown Community Conversations, which were exceptional about employing our special needs individuals. So that's something that we have done that we haven't seen in other districts, in other municipalities, even though we were new. That's different. That's something special that we do. Operations, Mr. Cathy, we've been pretty busy with operations. District-wide, we rekeyed all of our exterior doors, camera upgrades, cafeteria equipment upgrades, all of our schools. Houston High School, we've upgraded our energy management system. We added an LED exterior lighting to the high school. We have a TV studio created during this time. An artificial turf that we had to manage putting into a field. A lot of work there. The Jumbotron is coming in, I think, on the 25th. Restructuring of the cafeteria to a food court atmosphere for the upcoming year at the high school. It's going to be different than anything they've seen in the past. 4 sidewalk additions. We paved the parking lots and drive areas at Houston High School. We remodeled the guidance office. This was something that I think a lot of people in this room have worked on. The classroom crashers. Who would think that we'd be pulling up tile? There are 2 teachers who are going to be surprised when they come back to school and they have a 21st century classroom. It's going to be exceptional. We've remodeled, we put on new HVAC at the press box. We've also added new heat and air in our IDF closets. Those are our technology closets. At Houston Middle School, we've done the parking lots and drive areas. We upgraded to a hardwood floor instead of the old VCT tile. We moved the scoreboard from the high school to the middle school, so if you haven't seen the scoreboard at the soccer field, it is a huge upgrade from what they had. At Farmington, we've replaced the exterior windows and exterior lights at the front entrance. At Dogwood, and there's going to be a big change when they come back, they've had rooftop replacement, rooftop unit replacements. We've upgraded their energy management system. And you won't really see that, but we're going to see it in our utility cost because the way it controls the temperature in the classrooms. We've added a preschool playground at Dogwood. The pad's there, the playground will be there before school starts. And HVAC and 2 IDF closets. And you know at Riverdale, we've added sidewalks, and then we're starting a 64,000 square foot addition that's coming soon. Doing all that is great, but at the same time, we've been fiscally conservative. We are going to have about $8 million in our reserve. And Kevin, Mr. Jones will bring that to the board so you can see we've spent even less than we thought we did over this past year. So not only have we added all these programs, upgraded our schools, fixed our schools, but we've also built a strong reserve for the district. And then health insurance. It's great to build a reserve in the health insurance account, but I think what's more important is the benefit that we're providing our teachers. It's hard for a teacher to hear, oh, you're getting a 2% raise this year, but your insurance went up 3%, and the take-home pay that the teachers get is less. We haven't had that happen in Germantown Municipal Schools. Since we have done this every single year that we've been operating, this 2 years, we've been able to keep that cost the same while adding 2% raises for teachers. So all that being said, I think it's the appropriate time to discuss my contract, because I thank you for trusting me to be your superintendent. I was untested, I was a principal, I was a product of the system, but now I can tell you I know how to be a superintendent, and I know how to be a great superintendent. And it's time because of the... Thank you. Because of the time, this is when you renew superintendent's contracts. It's not in the middle of the year, it's after they've done their evaluation. And I told you at the retreat, if we wait until after the election because of the blackout period, you wouldn't do a contract at that time. That's not the right time to do a contract. I'm not asking for a change or many changes in my contract. The only thing I'm asking for is the same contract I've had with an additional 5 months. When we started, I had a 3-year, 6-month contract. I'm asking for a 3-year, 11-month contract. There's one other change in there that has to do with notification of me if you're going in a different direction, and so it's the same amount of time that I have to give you. I think the important thing about this that you don't see in other superintendent's contract, and we always talk about this, I have skin in the game in this contract. My wife and my family, we sat down and talked about this. This is where I grew up. This is where I've worked my whole adult life. This is where I taught. This is where I was a principal. I'm committed to Germantown schools. And because of that, there's a penalty in this contract. If I get a better offer, and they've started, if headhunters are coming and saying, we've seen what you've done, we want you to come to the district, I have to pay personally the district up to $15,000 for a superintendent search. That's my commitment to you. And so the length of time that you would be giving me for the contract, I hope is your commitment to me as superintendent, because I don't want to go anywhere, and I hope you don't want me to go anywhere. And with that, I'll answer any questions or let y'all discuss.
Well, I will just so everybody knows, I just wanted to highlight the changes. The superintendent did not ask for many changes, and I think everybody here got a red line version of the contract. There are minor changes due to requests that were in the first contract, and they're not required now, like requiring him to move to Germantown, criminal background, COBRA insurance provided, all those minor
Transition things, yes.
have been changed. Probably there's 3 things that have been changed in it. The one is, if the board elects not to renegotiate an employment contract with the director at the end of this contract term, the board shall provide notice of its decision at least 180 days prior to the expiration date of this contract. And it was 90 days, and the superintendent asked that it be changed to 180 days if we choose not to renegotiate his contract. Also, the board agrees to pay the director an initial annual salary of $163,200 minus such deductions as may be required by law. This is an increase of 2%, which in the contract, the director shall receive salary increases equivalent to increases given to teachers, and so he did receive a 2% increase, salary increase.
So that was in my previous contract.
Yeah, it was in the previous one. So, and what this contract is doing time-wise is Jason Mann will be director of schools commencing August 1st, 2016, ending June 30th, 2020. Those are probably the major things, except for also to Mr. Manuel has in there that if the director voluntarily terminates his employment during the term of the contract, the director agrees to pay for the cost required to recruit a new director, said cost not to exceed $15,000. And with said sum being withheld from his final salary payments or otherwise paid by the director until the full cost is paid to the board. So those are probably the most notable changes. Discussion?
So I'll start. I think it's been a great 2.5 years. I think we've accomplished a lot, and I can remember when we first started meeting, and literally we're our only employees. So I know you've worked very hard. Appreciate the efforts that you've done. I absolutely support renewing the contract. I think we should. I'm not sure any of us don't support that. So I'd be curious to hear if anyone is not supportive of renewing the contract. My only question I think we ought to discuss as a board is what is the right length of time for the contract. But as far as I'm concerned, I think we should absolutely renew the contract, and I don't know, does anyone disagree with that?
We've gotten a number of emails today, which kind of surprised me, because of all the things that we've ever talked about, I would think this would be one of the least controversial. And I've told Jason, I told Mr. Manuel on Friday, and I've told everybody that's emailed me, that I absolutely wholehearted endorse renewing the contract, and that I add on to that. I don't think we could go out and recruit somebody better. I don't think we could do better than Jason for somebody to lead our district. So, yeah, I'm fully supportive of renewing the contract.
So my only suggestion on a change would be, instead of extending it 4 years from today, would be to extend it 3 years from today. And so that the next board in 2 years would do exactly what we're doing today, which is to make the decision and give at least a year's notice to Mr. Manuel and his family as to what direction they're going to do. I would be shocked if the board would go in any other direction. But I think that that's, reviewing the contract, it's been about 2.5 years since we hired Mr. Manuel, and I think for the board to review every 2 years is probably a good practice to be in. I don't think we should be reviewing every year. Generally speaking, I think, as a lawyer, I counsel my clients to be careful about entering into long-term contracts on anything. We, in fact, as a company, don't enter into contracts longer than 3 years, except in very, very rare cases. So my suggestion to the board would be to have a 3-year contract instead of a 4-year contract, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts.
So you're suggesting that the contract end June 30th, 2019?
I think that's right. I think, what does it say, 2020, right?
Right.
Yeah, 2019, that's right.
And it's really not, your feelings are that it's not really due to his performance, it's because...
Not at all.
Not
at all.
You just don't believe in having a contract for
So
any longer.
no, this is not a comment on his performance at all. That's a 3-year contract, which is probably longer than any person in this room has, but I think it's absolutely not a contract, a comment on his performance. We may have the same board 2 years from now. We may not have the same board 2 years from now, and I think it's good for every board to comment on that, the superintendent's contract.
So I would like to answer that. When I was untested, you offered me a 3-year, 6-month contract. And so now you're offering me less of a contract. You're offering me less of a compensation package now that I have performed, now that I have demonstrated metrics. That's my only concern with that, is that, like I said, when we went through this and we were starting to look at this, I really debated that penalty that I personally have to pay the district if I leave. That's why I counter that with the length of time that this board is making a commitment to me.
I support the contract as is with no changes. I do want to point out a couple things that I like, that I think that are very clear. The evaluation dates, when we need to meet to set the evaluation for the next year, all those things are laid out really clearly, which I think is great. So that at any time, the board, or yearly, the board sits down and says, this is what we need from you for next year, and evaluates that every year. So I think that's huge. I also believe in the contract, at any point, the board and the superintendent could part ways. So if we do decide to part ways in 2 years or 3 years or 3 years and 6 months, whatever, there's an out clause, I think, for either party so that's why I support the contract as is. One thing that you neglected to add to your resume there that I would like to share, because I'm very proud of you for doing this. The first year that we were open, keeping our heads above water,
Mhm.
treading water. You went through Leadership Germantown.
Yes.
And I know that because I was in your class. And that was a 6-month commitment, and that was a huge, huge commitment. And I know that I did that to refine my leadership skills and make connections within the community. And I'm sure that you benefited in those ways as well. And I also, talking about connections in the community, noticed that there's also some pieces in here where we pay for you to be members of different groups, to go out there and not only educate yourself, but be an advocate and voice for Germantown schools, which I think is also a reflection of your advocacy and commitment to our district. So I think the contract should stand with no changes.
I support the contract as is. We are elected on 4-year terms. You should serve on a 4-year term.
I do agree with it as well. And I could list all the things that Mr. Manuel has listed and more. But when back in January 2014, we unanimously decided to hire Mr. Manuel as our superintendent. He had no proven track record, none. And now he has a proven track record, and he has come to us to ask us to give him a 4-year contract. I think we also have to look at him as a person. As a superintendent, he has shown us that he is an instructional leader. He's an educator. He has a heart for our students. He empowers his staff. He doesn't micromanage them. He has thought out of the box, and he lets his staff think out of the box. And we could name a few: Aramark, community conversations, and I could go in great detail on that. That has just been what we're doing with Baptist Hospital, the year contract that's going to be starting, where our functional skills students are going to go intern, and where they'll be hiring them down the road. You look at things that your staff has done that's different than Shelby County. We are not Shelby County. We are going our own path. The other things we've done with school snapshots. I just think that in addition to that too, also his knowledge. He's built a school district from the ground up, and I think as a board we need to show our faith and commitment to him.
Yeah, I differ from Mark, I think, in terms of the term of the agreement. We're limited to 4 years by state law. So this is the maximum contract that we could offer and still fit into and I agree with the superintendent that it's better to have the contract renew or expire over the summer as opposed to somewhere during the school year. So it seems to me that, first of all, it's a hard thing to talk about. It's hard to imagine, which makes it hard to talk about because you've got a board that is unanimous. This is our guy. He's done a great job, and we should renew his contract. And every one of us has said that. So when you talk about the length of the contract, that really kind of becomes material if you're going to make a change. You know, I'm going to do it in 3 years or 4 years. But we can't imagine doing that. We can't imagine making a change, so why talk about that? The reality to me, it appears, would be that if some future board decided that they wanted to go in a different direction, that would happen kind of 12 months in advance no matter what. That we'd be at this point in the process. We've got a year left to run on the contract, and the superintendent says it's time to renew my contract, and the board says, well, let's hold off on that a little bit. And I think what's written in here is 90 days notice that we're not going to renegotiate or something.
Expand to 180.
180 days notice that we're not going to renew.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is when it's the traditional time to renew, that would kind of bubble up to the surface. So the 3 years and 4 years is not a big deal to me, whether it's 3 or 4. The part of the contract that caught my eye is Section 19, and it's this hypothetical termination. What I think you touched on it earlier, and I view it as kind of a hypothetical part of the contract because once again we're in a situation where every board member is saying we need to renew this contract. He's our guy. He's done a good job, and he's going to do a good job going forward. And none of us can imagine a different situation. So we really don't need Section 19. We don't need to talk about how would we end this contract. But our lawyers and good business sense says, well, you should do some what if. You should think about what if the unexpected happens, contingencies, what if. And so my point is that if we ever got to the point where we were using Section 19, it wouldn't be where we are today. it wouldn't be 5 board members going, yes, this is our guy. There'd be at least 3 board members saying, you know what, I think we need to move in a different direction. We don't have that today. That's not where we are today. But if you did have that situation, and as impossible as it is to imagine that, if you did have that situation, what's the right thing to do? And the contract as written says that if the board ever did that, the severance for the superintendent would be however many months are left on the contract, so up to 46. And I think we as a board should look at what is fair and just. As a CEO of a school district, it's very clear that if some future board should ever decide to do that, the superintendent should be protected. His family should be protected. There should be a transition provision that says this is not going to hurt you. 24, 36, 47 months seems excessive to me. And I'd like to talk about making that, if you give that kind of notice, something more like 12 months of, you don't have to worry about anything. You got a 12-month period to transition. And I think that conversation's a little bit separated from who is our superintendent. Because as I said, it's not the current situation. Everybody says, this is our guy. It's some different situation than the one we have today, where there's 3 board members who say, you know what, we need to make a change. So my question is this: how tightly do we want to tie that board's hands? If you have 3 board members that say we need to make a change, how tightly should this board tie those people's hands? Or it might be these same 5 people. Things change. That's the purpose of this clause, is what if something unexpected happens? So I think that you've got to be cognizant, you've got to be sure that you've been fair and just and you've protected the superintendent. But you also need to protect the people that will replace us on this board, or our future selves on this board, and the citizens of Germantown. So that'd be the one change I would suggest, is to change that from till the end of the contract to 12 months from the day notice is given.
The reason I focused on the 4 years is exactly the termination provision. I mean, one way to solve that would be exactly what you talked about. I don't have a problem with the 4 years, other than if a future board makes a change, then that ends up being the cost of making a change. I guess for me, it's a little bit easier to think about that, only because that's what I do for a living, right? So I'm very used to thinking about the scenarios in which nobody can conceive of today. Like, I think you're right. Nobody here is going to ever think about changing out the superintendent. So why does it matter? What's 4 years? I guess because of my occupation, in which I'm paid to think about the never going to happen scenario, that's where it comes in. But I think, Ms. Fisher had said, well, this isn't a performance issue. It's absolutely not a performance issue. I think Mr. Manion's done a great job, and I think that we absolutely should renew his contract.
So I'll repeat myself again. Once again, I was an untested principal, and you offered me a 3-year, 6-month contract. I'm asking for a 3-year, 11-month contract. So why would you give me less of a compensation package now than you did when we started? If I'm hitting all of the metrics, if I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. And once again, built into the contract, this is your commitment to me. My commitment to you is a personal $15,000 payment to the board for another superintendent search if I choose to leave. That's where it's a joint venture between the 2 of us. I'm asking for the time. I'm giving you the fiscal penalty in this contract.
So I guess the only thing I'd say to respond to that is I think it's generally not a good business practice you have to be careful about entering into long-term contracts. I understand why you want a 4-year contract. If I were in your shoes, I'd want a 4-year contract too. That's greater protection. Our job as a board is larger than that, right? We have a job to look at both the district and the superintendent and balance the interests. If the rest of the board is united in giving a 4-year contract, I'm not going to vote against a 4-year contract. I think as a board, we'd be better off giving a 3-year contract. That's what I think. Or I'd be amenable to the idea of, having a smaller termination provision, which is in essence giving
a 1-year
the same
contract.
effect. Yeah,
That's a one-year
But
contract.
I think that's, you know, I mean, I will tell you, I don't have a contract in my job. None of the principals have contracts, none of the teachers have contracts.
But Jerry
I
Jones
understand
does.
when you're-
What does your
I
CEO
understand-
does?
Excuse me. He does. It's a 3-year contract. So I understand why you want a contract, and I understand that you should have a contract, because I get that it's not easy. You know, I think it's a balancing issue. I've said my opinion. You know, I don't know that there's any consensus to move toward a 3-year. Sounds like everyone wants to do a 4-year, and, you know, that's what it is, so. All right.
So I guess my question would be, is there any interest in revisiting the severance clause? You all three have said, I like the contract exactly as written. Any interest in revisiting that? Or any willingness to revisit that?
Not for me.
I'm going to stick with the contract as written.
I think if we as a community feel strongly about this, then as a political year, we need to ask those candidates how they feel about it.
I think it has nothing to do with this board and what other people running for political
I mean, you're
office
worried
think
about other boards.
Yeah, I don't think our job is to go ask other political candidates what they think about what we should do. I don't believe that is. So, I mean, if that influences how you make your decision, that's fine.
Okay.
It
I'm
doesn't influence
satisfied
how
we've
you make my
discussed the
decision.
issue, and I want to thank all 4 of you for helping me understand your position. So I feel like I've got a real clear picture where everybody stands, and I appreciate that.
And I just want to close with this. You know, I firmly believe, as a board member, as we're faced with decisions, we always act in the best interest of the children, because they don't have a voice. They don't vote. They don't go to the polls. And is it in our students' best interest to hire this man again? And my answer is yes.
So I agree with that 100%.
I think we're unanimous on that.
Good.
I think everyone's unanimous on that.
That's all that's been said here tonight, so I'm glad that we're all in agreement.
Any more discussion on superintendent's contract? We have some housekeeping duties real quick. I think everybody has a folder. In there is a facilities master plan, just so you can look at that ahead. I'm sure everybody has the full plan at home, but so you can give that some thought before we discuss how to use our additional funding. Also in your packet here, there is a calendar of board meeting dates for the whole next school year, so you can put those on your calendar. They are all, except for this one, everyone is in the City Hall. Thank you to Ms. Subarami for arranging getting all that
Thank you.
scheduled.
That's a big job.
I'm going to skip over the next one. The next one also, if you could skip over 2 things. There is the Director of Schools Performance Evaluation Instrument. That is the updated one from our retreat, where we talked about what our goals were to be for our superintendent for his performance evaluation next June. I wanted to go ahead and give it to you now so you could look at it, take it home. If you have any changes, any suggestions, we can address those at our.
If I remember correctly, he said we should have at least 5
You're
norms.
on the norms here.
Yeah.
I'm on the performance evaluation.
Oh,
I
sorry.
skipped one, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to that.
Okay, go back to that.
So performance evaluation, everybody can take that, look at it. This is what came from our retreat. And if you have any changes, corrections, you can hold it to our next meeting. I did want to throw out there, the superintendent has mentioned that he needs to have a special called meeting at the end of July. And I wanted to try to have this as a date when everybody was available.
What's the topic of the meeting?
It's what I've talked to each of you on the phone about.
Oh.
We need to look at our fees for the district. It's a requirement. We have been in touch with the comptroller's office and can't get a clear answer, because what is a fee versus what's required to do an extracurricular? So we're going to follow suit of what Arlington and Carville did and list everything in our district. We'll probably list them in two categories: our extracurricular fees or things that are required to play different sports or activities, and our fees that are tied to grades in the district. But we want to bring that before the board for y'all to see.